Okay, so when it comes to web hosting, right, it's the very important component because the web hosting is pretty much like hosting all your website information. And then when it comes to CMS, it means to be a content management system, and it's in a way something that is quite important in terms of like how it relates to SEO as well. So how web hosting works is that in the internet, right? So in a way, the HTTP will actually send like a request and then get a response to the internet on the front end side, right? You need to load the web page to the front end user. So web hosting servers are space where websites can be live and be stored while being accessible in the internet. So if you want your website to be live online, you need a web hosting. So when considering web hosting package, right, you have to understand what do you want to get out of the website. Are you like trying to run a professional blog and it doesn't need to load up any sort of like functionality as well as like heavy content? If that's the case, then like very simple hosting will be sufficient most of the time. And if it's an online store like e-commerce, right, then some of the important factors will be the reliability and speed as well. So in Singapore, you can buy web hosting in a lot of places, like from Podium, GoDaddy, SiteGround, and other channels as well. So when you actually like looking at your hosting option, there are also a lot of like terminology, like say like WordPress hosting and all these. So WordPress hosting is pretty much like more or less optimized around WordPress, and then maybe have other like additional feature as well. But it's actually not really necessary in most cases.
Yeah, so before you buy hosting, right, you need to know where the servers are located. Okay, so if you want to target audiences in Singapore, it's better to host your site in Singapore. Is that right, Robert? Am I right? Okay, okay, just to double confirm, just in case. Yeah, because the site will load faster and all that. But Singapore hosting is a bit more expensive compared to a US server. Okay, so GoDaddy, I think it's quite cheap, but Podium can be very expensive because Podium hostings are the servers are all based in Singapore. The data centers in Singapore. So yeah. So you have to look which part of the world your client wants to target. Right?
Okay. So that will be the terminology is the data center. So when checking hosting, it will be important to look at the location of the data center. Most of the hosts, the one that we are using most of the time, like Cloudways and of course Podium, they have a local Singapore-based data center, which actually helps a lot in terms of like site speed and etc. So when it comes to different hosting type, that's what we call the shared hosting, meaning to say that you are sharing the physical server space with a lot of other websites that the host company is actually like really selling in terms of the plan. So it comes with some trade-off in terms of, because you are sharing, so like the resources might be ran out like quite easily, especially when like a website traffic suddenly peaks. Like sometimes maybe like you're running an e-commerce and during the peak season, the website might find that it's like getting very slow. Then might be because these type of like resources picked up and not really in a way enough for your hosting needs in the first place. Then there's also one that's called VPS, Virtual Private Server. It's actually more ideal for people who actually need more than a shared plan, but then doesn't require like a dedicated server by themselves. So Cloudways is actually a managed cloud hosting that doesn't have their own services. They don't own any like data center or stock, but they are actually more of like a reseller in other like cloud service, like say Voucher, Amazon web hosting, and like other hosts like VPS network. Then how do we choose the web hosting? Ensure that high uptime. Server location is located as close to your majority site visitor as possible. And then VPS is actually most of the time preferred over shared hosting. And then security as well is actually one of the important factor. And then the customer support, which is quite important as well, as we have gone through when trying to set up the site lah. Yeah. Then domain registrar, I think this I will go through quickly. So DNS record is pretty much like a zone file that is live in the DNS server to actually provide information of including like IP address and all these to point to the domain and to link up your domain to the host. Name server is pretty much like works in tandem with the DNS record. It means like a different thing altogether lah. So name server is a library where DNS record the catalog. Then how do you set up the name server, right? Using hosting with other spammy sites can damage your website's credibility. So sharing name server can also like result in slower site speed and downtime. So there are different type of like records. So commonly the A record, C name record, the mail MX record is the mail exchange record. Then you can see in the screenshot, right? So from here we already see three type of record. So one is the A record. So A stands for address. So this is usually used when you actually set up the IP to point your website to the domain. A record is something similar, but then it's actually like more a record to actually set up like a unique IP address. C name record is more for running different like FTP or other web pages that is not really needed to know for SEO purpose. Then of course we also have the name server record as well. And mail exchange is commonly used for like setting up like emails within the domain you want to use. Then lastly will be the TXT record, in which is commonly used in SEO for verifying the domain verification.
Yeah, so in most cases, right, when let's say you buy a domain in GoDaddy, but you are trying to point it to some other hosting, so you will need to update the A record only, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Then for the MX, it's more for your email exchanges. So if you don't want to host it with on the same server as your website, you can host it elsewhere as well. So this hosting company will then manage your emails, your size, and whatnot, space, right? So A record is the most important part. So when you want to point your domain to somewhere else, then that's where you edit the information. Okay.
Okay, so now we come to CMS. So a website that you see on the front end, right? It can be simply just a HTML coder, just writing HTML code and then live the whole website, and then there it goes, the website is live. But then CMS makes everything easier because when you log into the CMS, right, you are only managing your content through an interface that makes it very easy to manage your content and make amendments and enhancements. So there's a lot of different like CMS in the world. A lot of like commonly known one would be WordPress, Drupal, Joomla, Magento, OpenCart, and so on and so forth. Usually SME companies, right? Most of them we commonly see them use Shopify, WordPress, and all, because the way these like these platforms market is more like a very affordable pricing and not really like in the way easy to use as well. Then we also have the drag and drop builders like Wix, Squarespace, Weebly, Google Sites, and all. Then enterprise, commonly we see a lot of enterprise sites using Salesforce Commerce, Adobe Experience Manager, Sitecore, Sitefinity, and some of like the headless CMS like Contentful, etc. So this graph would show in terms of market share of like websites. We can easily see here that Shopify would represent the most in terms of e-commerce market share of like websites in the world. WooCommerce is also part of WordPress as well. So it's actually like a plugin within WordPress for e-commerce businesses. So e-commerce on CMS is actually like allow commerce shop owners to actually create, edit, and publish digital website content without writing any code. Commonly, it's like Shopify, Magento, and WooCommerce. We also see other less common ones like PrestaShop and OpenCart as well. Then this is the list of some of like the not really SEO friendly CMS. Wix, Squarespace, and most of like the drag and drop builders are unfortunately not very SEO friendly in a way. And then others are more of like the advanced type of like CMS that have some limitation when it comes to really implementing enhancement to SEO. Lastly, it will be JavaScript websites that's like this example running on, like say, like React framework or etc. This because of how Google render the page, right? Most of these type of sites makes it very difficult for Google to actually crawl and successfully index these sites. Then one of the better CMS is WordPress, because I think for many reasons they are user-friendly, URLs can be customized, blog-friendly, SEO-friendly themes. Then a lot of different plugins that can like easily make an enhancement. Then one of the cons is that a lot of times websites as they expand, they want to launch new services and all, they try to install plugin after plugin after plugin, which will cause the page speed to actually increase quite a lot. That in a way, if like the functionality is required but doesn't really, the website doesn't really serve the need of the business anymore because it's been really dragging down the site, taking ages to load, then of course businesses will decide whether they need to change their website altogether to another more customized solution. Then there are also some other tools that's indicated here. So this like Wapalizer, right? It's a tool that you can actually easily actually see what type of like e-commerce and also CMS that the website is using. Then we can also check like CDN information through like third-party tools as well. So CDN is called the Content Delivery Network, which is a distributed network of servers that provide like several advantages. One of it is like a cache content. So if the website is like a server down or what, right? So CDN will actually help to create a cache version of the content so that firstly user can still visit the site, and secondly SEO wouldn't be impacted, as Googlebot will still be able to crawl the cache version of the site. Then it also helps to improve the page load speed and also like reduce bandwidth usage as well. And then CDN is also in a way one of the workaround as well, also enhancement when for example you have a hosting that is hosted in say Singapore, but you want to target like say US, you might need to actually use a CDN to actually serve the server like so that throughout different countries they can still be able to load the page at the not affected by the data center of the host. So besides like Cloudflare is the most like popular CDN solution, there are also others like Amazon CloudFront as well. And then like important for SEO because of the faster website, lower bounce rate, as well as like in the cases of like server location where it matters for search engine ranking. Okay, so remaining slides will be more of like Halo CMS, which had been gone through before. So I'll just quickly share it. So Halo CMS is more of like being able to like add design variant. So it's headless because it's not like a typical like a CMS. And these are some of like the popular headless CMS like Contentful, etc. Okay, so we'll leave this to further read up if you are interested, because this more of like not really necessary until you come across like this type of like CMS. Okay, so yeah, that's all for the deck on this hosting and CMS. Is there any questions so far?